Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast, where you will discover practical strategies to inspire you to boost the health and nutrition of your kids. I'm Jessica Donovan, a qualified naturopath specialising in kids' health, and I want to make it as easy as possible for you to raise healthy and happy kids. Let's get into it. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Jessica Donovan here, and I'm excited about today's guest. We are going to be talking to Jen from Sleep.Thrive.Grow Consulting, all about baby and toddler sleep tips. So you will hear Jen is just a delight. She's just got such a beautiful nature, and she has a lot of great credentials as well. So she's a registered nurse, and she is a certified infant and child sleep consultant. She's also a mum of 3. And I specifically asked Jen today about baby sleep issues. So babies that are frequently waking through the night. And then we also touch on toddlers' sleep as well, and talking about those pesky early morning toddler wakings. And she shares some tips around that. So I highly recommend that you go and check Jen out over at Sleep.Thrive.Grow.com. We will pop the links to where you can find her in the show notes. She's also got a great Instagram account that we talk about a little bit as well, which you will find by looking up Sleep Thrive Grow. So welcome, Jen. Welcome to the podcast, Jen. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Jessica.
I'm excited to get chatting about sleep with you today, and I know our audience are going to love this subject. So can you start by just telling us a little bit about what led you to become a sleep consultant?
Well, I sort of got into it when I had my first child. So coming from a nursing background, I've been a registered nurse now for over 12 years. I thought, having a kid is just, I'll be fine. I'm used to caring for people, supporting people. This will be a walk in the park, it's my own child. I'll be fine. I had my son, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely out of my depth, completely not in control. I really, I knew how to feed him and how to keep him clean, but I really didn't know how to support him when it came to sleep. And I found he was just sort of irritable. I was second guessing myself, just like winging it to the point of really not knowing at all anything and what to do. So it sort of led me on that path where I felt like, for me, when I work with people in the hospital, I'm always curious of how I can find a connection with this person. How can I make them be at ease? And the thought that I wasn't being able to do that for my son was really hard for me. So that led me on a path to really look into the sleep needs of babies and really start to understand what is required for them to feel like happy, healthy, grow and thrive. So I discovered a book that was written by a registered nurse, and it was my Bible. It really was. It wasn't about maintaining sort of strict routines or, giving yourself these high expectations, but it just really talked about providing healthy, supportive foundations for sleep and how best we can support our babies to do that and learn those and kind of nurture their natural biological capabilities. So, I just got passionate literally from that day. Again, I was a young mum. I was 26 when I had my son, and I didn't really have many other role models or people close to me with children. So it literally was me in this book that was kind of getting me through. And then from then I went on to have 2 more children and was able to adapt all the stuff I'd learned through having my son, and just seeing that even with different temperament kids or, kids with different needs, they were still able to respond really well to some basic foundations of sleep, and they were happier and healthier. And then I was happier too. And I felt less anxious, more confident about my parenting, which then reflected onto my children too. So the benefits just kept growing and growing the more I was able to feel empowered in my parenting, I think.
Yeah, and it's such a key word, isn't it? Like just feeling empowered, and having those realistic expectations is so important as well. I think that that's where a lot of the time we can have unrealistic expectations when it comes to babies and toddlers, and how they should sleep and how much they should sleep and when they should sleep, which I know is a lot in terms of the work that you do. So thank you for sharing that with us, and tell us a bit more how you support parents with sleep.
It's very much so supporting parents with sleep. It's definitely not a one size fits all. In fact, I absolutely hate one size fits all approaches because, I think a thing that gets missed a lot is the temperament of the baby or child I work with. That is huge in the way we structure our support and how much support they're potentially going to need through a process. So temperament is huge. And also your own parenting values and beliefs are really important as well. So I love to find out where people come from or what they kind of associate around sleep. For example, lots of parents believe sort of they need to put their children to sleep, or their children don't have that ability. So when you understand what they believe about sleep, you can really start to break down and support them in ways that's going to be more than just a quick fix. It's something that I like to give them long lasting things, and it's something that I want them to be able to, troubleshoot and like be able to work out for themselves when they finish support with me, not just feel that it's like, oh yeah, you're with me for 2 weeks and then I'm on my own and I don't know what I'm doing. It's got to be a long-term changes of supporting those healthy habits, but the parents have got to be kind of engaged and understand that. And that's what I really, really value in what I do and work with families with.
I love that, because it's not linear either. I mean, I talk about this often when it comes to kids' health. It's not like we achieve, that ultimate result and then we don't have to think about it anymore. It's the same with sleep. Like our kids' sleep changes as they go through different developmental stages and, different environmental factors. I know I've got a 13-year-old, and it was last year he started struggling to get to sleep. It only lasted a fairly short period of time, and I was lucky to have all the naturopathic strategies up my sleeve. But I was like, wow, this, you don't expect kind of sleep issues in teenagers. Well, I hadn't really thought of that being an issue. So I love that you're sort of talking about the empowering parents with these sort of skills and tools that they can use long term, and also taking into consideration that temperament is so important, isn't it?
Yeah, it's huge, and yeah, it's exactly right. It's just giving parents and families the tools to support their children through normal developments that are always going to crop up. It's definitely, again, like you say, not a linear process either. It's just, we might see some positive changes, and then we might have to adapt and put some other things in place just to really support them further. So it's a constant, that's why I really sort of value my one-on-one, because we really get down to seeing all the little changes and making the tweaks along the way, and the parent can really have me on their side to kind of talk through any feelings that they're having, or it just really gets such great results that way, because we're not sort of putting pressure on. And another thing is what I find is parents can be so ready for change, but when they actually start implementing change, they can start to mourn the old way of their baby falling asleep. So for example, that I work with lots of families that their child has always been rocked to sleep their whole life. And this is, they might be 11, 12 months old now. And then, they've had enough because baby's too heavy and they just want to really support them in healthy ways of sleeping. But when the process starts and they start sleeping really well, they're kind of going, oh my gosh, like I'm missing that kind of, And it's actually just taking a step and taking a breath with them and helping them process that too, processing those changes that they may have not realize that they might be feeling or thinking that was going to come. And so I really enjoy much more than just sort of bringing in the science of sleep to support baby, but really working as a whole for everyone to feel that kind of empowerment within their family.
Yeah, I love that. And let's sort of talk specifically about babies' sleep now, because one of the common issues that comes up with our Natural Super Kids Club members or my naturopathic clients or our Natural Super Kids community as a whole is, that mums are exhausted and fatigued because their babies are frequently waking through the night. I think it's one of the kind of big challenges that new parents have. I know it was a big challenge for me when I had young babies, and it's almost like this badge of honor, isn't it, in the mothers groups? Like, is your baby sleeping through the night yet? Like, it's this expectation, or it's this kind of place that we're all sort of aiming to get to. And I'm sure you've got a lot to sort of say about that. So can you talk to us a bit about frequent night waking in babies and some of the, I guess, the strategies and things that parents can think about to sort of start to improve that?
Yeah. So I think the first thing to realize is that, every baby, even ourselves, we all wake throughout the night. So at the end of our sleep cycles, we all have a partial wake up. And for us, we may not even recall any of those little partial wake ups, or we might, depending if we've sort of had a very stressful day, we might find we wake at 3 a.m. It's a really common trait from being overtired, that 3 a.m. wake, and we might kind of adjust our pillow and then go back to sleep again quite easily. So it's really important to know that even like a sleeping through the night, realistically, yes, we're sleeping through the night, but we do partially wake, and it is very normal for children to wake up in between sleep cycles throughout the whole night. But the difference comes from as to if they start sort of calling out for help in between those sleep cycles. And this can be a number of things. So it's definitely a little bit of investigation to decipher whether these frequent wake-ups are due to anything that are easily fixed, or whether it's due to a sort of a bigger issue in how they're falling asleep and being able to stay asleep. So I always say to parents, firstly, it's really important to know roughly what is average for their child's age group is in wake-ups each night. So having a good, I follow the American Academy of Pediatrics, which kind of governs our children's sleep requirements, and just knowing, okay, 2 wake-ups a night is quite normal for this age group. So then you can go, okay, are they within a normal wake-up range, or are they excessively waking outside of that range, which that will sort of lead to more investigation. But we definitely want to make sure that it's not due to hunger. Then it's also really looking at the environment and making sure there's no environmental reasons as to why they're waking. So this could be potentially if the room wasn't dark enough, or temperature, if it was too cold at a certain point during the night, that's going to cause them to wake up. So that's, or they're in uncomfortable clothing that's making them sweat excessively, or things like that. So those are the simple fixes, is, knowing whether they're hungry or whether it's environmental. And then when it gets a bit more like complex, or when we have to look at their overall sleep, is to work out whether they're overtired or undertired. Maybe their balance of sleep is a little bit out, what they're having during the day, which is impacting on their night sleep. So getting the right balance of sleep, again, it's kind of really knowing what's an average amount of, say, time allocated for naps, and going, yeah, she's done 2.5 hours of day sleep today. That's pretty good to support a good night. Or whether it's she's only slept for 45 minutes all day, chances are she's going to wake up a lot more because she's just overtired. And then, really understanding that, and then knowing then whether it's maybe a wake up out of habit, which, depending on how your child falls asleep during the night, generally when they wake between their sleep cycles, they often need the same sort of support to get them back to sleep again. So for a child that doesn't fall asleep in their own sleep space, or they're rocked or maybe soothed through nursing or bounced or anything like that, and then they're transferred once asleep, when your baby sort of goes through those sleep cycles and comes to the end of one, they're going to call out and say, how do I get back to sleep again? They haven't, and it's nobody's fault. It's just they haven't had practice in developing connections to falling asleep or staying asleep in the cot on their own without support. So it's when it comes down to things like that, it's definitely a gradual approach depending on the age of the child and what's been going on. I definitely don't ever use anything like cry it out. It's a very, very kind of gradual process that we help build our baby's confidence in a new way of sleeping. Also, mum's confidence in knowing how to support her baby best to minimize the stress on everyone, but, you know, to really, sleep is just so important. So it's just getting that healthy sleep for everyone, for mum and bub, and having that consolidated sleep at night is really, really supportive of that.
Yes, definitely. Oh, so many things to think about there. And I think, you know, again, it comes down to those realistic expectations, and, you know, what's normal for a baby of a particular age in terms of how often they're waking through the night, how much sleep, you know, they need in total. But then those things that you kind of took us through, that we can start to think about. And there's like so many different factors that can affect sleep. And I think you've covered lots of them there. Just a little question on the, you know, I think a lot of mums or parents get confused about the whole, how do I tell whether my baby is overtired or undertired? Is there any ways that we can kind of figure this out, or is that really individual? And I'm guessing it comes back to looking at, you know, how much sleep they've had versus how much sleep is recommended for that particular age as well. Anything to say about that?
It's a very hard one because lots of the signs can be very similar. You know, it's like settling down for a nap can be harder when you're overtired, but it's also harder when you're undertired as well. So that's why I find it's really important to know, roughly how much sleep is needed. Also, awake windows are really useful, especially in that first 6 months of age, just knowing how much roughly a baby can tolerate. Again, give or take 10 or 15 minutes, depending on your own individual child. But knowing those rough awake windows is really beneficial because we're all very busy these days. We're not 20 years, 30 years ago where we'd sort of have children and that was our job and that's all we did. We're often, like running businesses or, you know, on our phones, calling something or doing things, and we're just constantly on the go. So I find whereas before we probably had a bit more time to really start recognizing cues in our babies, it's not always going to be that. Number one, lots of babies don't show very many cues, and parents can stress about finding these sleep cues but not seeing any at all, which can be really stressful. Number two, it's just having that time to really watch your child. And sometimes, as much as we all say we would love to, there's times when we just are too busy. Then we've gone, oh my gosh, how long have they been awake for? I better get them down for a sleep. And, you know, they may have yawned 3 times, but we've missed every single yawn and think, okay, they're okay. So knowing some awake windows and times allocated for each age range is really beneficial, because you can kind of say, okay, they woke at 10 o'clock, a 4-month-old, roughly by about 12 o'clock, they're really due to be asleep again, a 2-hour awake window. And you can kind of then go, okay, if I'm not sort of highly focused or I've got a few things to do, I just know when that clock's coming up to that 12 o'clock mark that there's going to be a nap due, because he's been awake for 2 hours now. So I've actually got there's a link on my website now that you can click on, and I've created a free sleep cheat guide, I like to call it. But basically in that guide is I mention awake windows. I also talk about roughly how many naps required in a day and how much day sleep. And I talk about total sleep needs right up until, past 5 years old, just to give parents like a little quick guide that they can go, okay, my baby's this age, this is roughly what we can expect. And it can just, it's not the... often the complete package as to why our babies are waking or not sleeping enough or things like that. But it's a really good starting point to go, okay, I've really seen that I'm working on the day sleep and I'm getting the right amount. So now it's time to do a bit more investigation on top of that.
Yes, I love that. And I'll be sure to share a link to that in the show notes, because like you said, it's not necessarily going to give everyone all the answers that they need, but you need to like kind of get those foundational things right first before you start looking at the more complex issues. So yeah, that's great. I'll definitely make sure I pop that link in the show notes. So if you're listening, head on over to the show notes and you can find that link for that free sleep cheat guide. Is that what you called it?
Yeah, like a sleep cheat ebook. It's just, I use it as well for my work. It's just so super handy to just refer back to if I'm having a brain fart moment and, speaking to someone. It's just a really good indication and helping me troubleshoot where the problems may lie within the sleep. Is it anything to do with the daily sleep needs being missed or something like that, or there's too much? So it's just, a really good troubleshooting guide.
Yeah, definitely. And I just wanted to share a bit of a story, testing my memory, but I was just, as you were talking about these kind of, knowing these awake windows, it reminded me of a bit of a loose schedule that really worked well when my first was a baby, when I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah, like most of us.
Exactly. But I read a book called The No Cry Sleep Solution. I don't know if you know of that book, but that was just one little thing from that book really stuck with me, because I was, he was waking up and I was feeding him, and then he was having a bit of, playtime or tummy time or whatever. And then I was feeding him again to get him back to sleep. And one thing that they talked about in this book was like having a bit of a loose routine of like figuring out what is right for your baby. But for what worked really well for us was, him waking, I fed him, then he would have some tummy time and playtime, and then I would put him to sleep without the other feed I was feeding him too often. And that little switch made a huge difference. So that worked really well for me. And I think what you're talking about is having these kind of, not set in stone routines that, we need to get our babies to bed at 10:15 every day, but just sort of being aware of some of these, awake windows and having a bit of a loose routine. So just wanted to share that.
And I just to add on that as well, I think it's really important to understand that as human beings, we are creatures of habit, and our circadian rhythm and that's the rhythm that basically is our internal body clock, which tells us when we're hungry and when we need sleep and things like that. It's when it's on the same sort of time frame or within, half an hour or so, that's when it works at its best. And it's when we develop those cues for hunger, develop those cues for sleep. So, I put an example on my Instagram the other day, but if you always have your lunch at 12 p.m., and then, you've done that for as long as you can remember within half an hour of 12 p.m. And then you organise a lunch with someone and it's a 1:30 p.m. If you can guarantee that you're going to feel hungry at 12:30 p.m. because that's where your body clock, your circadian rhythm is regulated by food, light, and social interaction. So it starts to feel those hunger cues there. And that's when we can use that to our advantage with sleep, is that our body also starts to release hormones at those similar times. If we're falling asleep at roughly those times, our body starts to respond in that way. So it's working with the biology of sleep, and having a rough routine really helps to support that and actually make it parenting a lot easier, because we're not going against the grain. We're actually using their natural biology to support it further.
Yes, I love that. What a great example. I know I went out for dinner with some girlfriends a few weeks ago, and like we couldn't get in till 7 p.m. and 7 p.m. is late these days for dinner.
It is.
So yeah, and I had that exact same situation where I was starving by 6 o'clock.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so just a quick question before we finish up about toddlers and sleep. So one of the common questions and challenges that I get that gets talked about in the community is this issue of frequent early waking with toddlers. So toddlers waking way too early before mum or dad are ready to get up, and that obviously affecting the whole family's sleep. So can you talk to us about a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Again, kind of coming on to that circadian rhythm, how it's regulated by food, light, and social interaction, and it does work well when it's in sync with the external clock. So often, waking up between 6 and 7 a.m. is actually highly normal for a toddler, as much as we probably hate the thought of being up at 6 a.m. We can definitely try and sort of keep them in their sleep space until maybe like 6:30, but we're probably at our limits there. But, definitely, if it's something like 4:35, 5:30, that's what I would really class as an early rise. And it's definitely something we can look at supporting parents to help them kind of get on top of. So again, it's just knowing your toddler's sleep needs. Some of them will still have a nap around, some of them may not if they're sort of over 3 years old. So it's working out how many total hours of sleep is allocated in a 24-hour period for your toddler's age range, to really kind of get an idea whether we're expecting them to stay in bed way too long or whether we're actually within reasonable expectations for our toddlers. And that's why I really love, a great thing to do is to just keep track of your toddler's sleep for even a week, when they go to bed or when they fall asleep and when they're getting up, and see how many hours that totals to, because every child's different, and you might have some toddlers that 12 hours a night, maybe 11 hours a night, and then some 10 hours and they're done, and this is all they're going to sleep for. So it's really understanding your toddler's individual needs on that sense, and going, okay, maybe I was being unrealistic. Maybe I just need to sort of bring bedtime a bit later, and that might support them to sleep in a bit more. But any sort of social cues as well for toddlers. So they only have to hear dad getting up for the morning, and dads are so loud when they're getting ready for work. They only have to hear him cough or flush a toilet at 5 a.m. That is enough to trigger their body clock into wake mode. And especially toddlers, because, they're up and ready to go. They're just like little sponges absorbing as much as they can during the day. And their development is just next level. So a cough or a sneeze or something at 5 a.m. is enough to be like, I'm awake now. So it's really, really looking into any environmental cues, either internal or even external. There might be a bin truck that comes or a noisy car down the road that stirs them at that hour. So trying to eliminate as much environmental things as possible to support them to stay in bed. And toddler sleep clocks are really important too. Like, they can be really beneficial if they're introduced correctly. So it's not kind of setting unrealistic time, saying, okay, I want him to get up at 7, I'm going to stick a toddler sleep clock and set it to 7 a.m. and you can't get up until the sun comes up. It's actually, there's a process to it that we can work on to support them to really use that clock to our advantage and give them, it's all about positive reinforcement for any extra bit of sleep that they do. And yeah, I've actually got a blog on my website all about how to introduce toddler sleep clocks correctly and get the most out of it and not waste your money, basically. So yeah, I've got some information on that. Plus, I'm always around I often with toddlers do like offer my guidance call, which is just half an hour where you can literally just pick my brains for 30 minutes and tell me exactly what's going on. And there might be a few things that just have been missed or haven't really been thought about. And I can really just help guide you in the right direction over a quick call.
That sounds perfect. And I'll make sure I link to that blog post about the toddler sleep clocks as well. I just feel like I wish I had you when my babies were little, because I just think what you talk about makes so much sense. You've just got a very beautiful, calm nature. So can you tell the mums that are listening where they can find out more about you? You've shared so many great tips that I'm sure will be helpful, but like you said, it's really important to work, or you're going to get the best results if you work individually with people. So yeah, tell us a bit more about what you offer and where people can find you.
So my website is Sleep.Thrive.Grow.com, and I'm also on Instagram, which is Sleep_Thrive_Grow. So they can search me on there. There's lots of tips and blogs, and again, you can download that sleep cheat guide as well. But yeah, I basically, if you're in Perth, you have the option of home support packages, which this is up until 5 years of age, where I actually come into your house and spend, I like to say 2 hours, but I'm usually always there longer. But it's just working through and having a bit more of a visual experience about how to support your baby or toddler with sleep. I also do phone support, so that means it's available worldwide. I work a lot with overseas clients and over East as well, supporting families via a phone support system. And the key really is we use a login system for 2 weeks where I can really track what's going on and troubleshoot for you. So I know when people come to me, they are so tired, and thinking about what's for dinner is hard enough, let alone trying to decipher whether you're making the right decisions or supporting your child's sleep the best. So I find it's just really beneficial because you've kind of got me to rely on and really get you started on seeing these trends that are happening. And then by the time you leave support with me after a couple of weeks, it's just the confidence is just lifted, the sleep deprivation is improved, and they're able to really go, okay, yeah, I've seen this response and I know how to work this into my normal day that's going to work for my family. So yeah, it's I absolutely love connecting with people and trying to make their parenting journeys as easy as possible with a little bit of knowledge that saves you reading a lot of sleep books, but just to give you that really basic foundations that's going to support some healthy sleep for your family.
Oh, that just sounds wonderful, and so great that you offer that service, like wherever people are in the world, because, when mums are sleep deprived, or dads, but I'm imagining it's mainly mums that you work with, it's hard to leave the house and get to appointments and that sort of thing. So having that online or telephone support is such a great resource for mums. So I'll be sure to pop all of the links in the show notes so people can come over and find you. And yeah, definitely follow Jen at Sleep_Thrive_Grow on Instagram. I love your Instagram. I was laughing my head off at your funny face reel the other day.
Oh, my kids played that over and over again. And I was like, okay, you're making me really embarrassed now, because I did it on a whim, and I was, I just think for those that are wondering what we're talking about, but it's just the importance of keeping like a light sense of humor with parenting, because there's so many laugh or cry moments with parenting, and finding the funny side or being able to laugh at yourself or having those silly moments with your kids, but even on your own, I think it's just like it just saves your sanity sometimes. So I think, I shared a funny clip about humor and how important it is in parenting.
Oh, I totally agree. And, wait till your kids become teenagers. My kids beg me not to share my reels of me dancing and being silly.
I'm going to keep my 9-year-old's my biggest fan at the moment. He's like, do it to this song, Mum. Like,
oh, so good.
He's my little like confidence booster sitting over there. So yeah.
That's great. So good. Yeah. So I love that you have that kind of, that humor approach to something that can be, pretty serious and heavy. But I hope everyone's really enjoyed listening to you today. I'm sure they have. Go on over and check out what Jen's got to offer, particularly if you're struggling with sleep. Thanks so much for joining me today, Jen.
No, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've just loved sharing all this information. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. See you later.
See ya. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Head on over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, for the show notes for this episode, as well as a whole heap of inspiration to help you raise healthy and happy kids. I'll see you next week.